Hey everybody, welcome to the Fanatics of Film, and we're in outer space. How about you?
It's a little chilly out here. I could use a zip. We do a little hoodie action now.
Excuse me, I'd like to open up an account.
Well, great. What type of account do you have in mind?
This kind. This kind.
You said he was armed.
He had a gun.
You saw it.
Well, he was also sort of a gentleman.
He was very polite.
He seemed like a nice enough fella.
Look at that. Does he smile?
Welcome to the Fanatics of Film. I'm Joe.
And my name is Ben. Thank you for tuning in. We're talking today about...
We're going to talk about The Old Man and the Gun.
Look at that.
This kind.
You said he was armed.
and how he shot himself and everybody else, and then...
He only shot young people. The Old Man and the Gun shot young people. He shot young bullets into other old people. We just saw The Old Man and the Gun tonight. It was released from Fox Searchlight Pictures on the 28th of September. It took a couple weeks for it to start thrown around in theaters here. We went and saw it at the Cine Arts at the Century 16. And what can I tell you? It's Robert Redford's swan song. It's Robert Redford's final film. He did announce last August that he is retiring, which is probably not a shock to a lot of you. In fact, a lot of you may not even be fans of Robert Redford, but in the last few years, he has made a really interesting comeback, appearing in Captain America.
So Winter Soldier, that's considered to be one of the best MCU movies.
He was so good in that movie. It was good to see him because I hadn't seen him in a while. I don't think he'd done a movie in about a decade at that point. And then the year after that, he did, the same year, he did All Is Lost, where it's basically just him on a yacht, lost at sea. And that movie was so good, and there's hardly any dialogue in it. I love Robert Redford. Love him in The Sting. Love him in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Sneakers.
Sneakers is fantastic. All the President's Men. The man's the natural. I mean, he's an icon. So in a way, I'm kind of sad that he's retiring, but he is joining the ranks of Sir Sean Connery and Gene Hackman, and Warren Beatty is being sort of retired, although Warren Beatty's only half retired, but sort of retired icons. And this is a good movie for him to go out with. This was...
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid was one of my favorites, by the way. Anyway,
yeah,
so
that movie's great. Yeah, this film was directed by David Lowery, who had.
You said it was like his fourth or fifth or sixth film.
It's his fifth film. He did previously. He did a film called Saint Nick in 2009, which I'm not familiar with. I've never heard anything about it. It could even be a short film for all I know. The film that's
about the anti-Santa Claus.
Probably. No, that's Krampus. I think his sort of breakthrough film was in 2013 called Ain't Them Body Saints. Ain't Them Body Saints with Casey Affleck. And then in 2016, Disney snatched him up to direct that live-action Pete's Dragon, which actually wasn't bad. In fact, I enjoy it more than I do the original Pete's Dragon because I loved the original as a child, but growing up, it is a hard movie to watch. No offense to the late Mickey Rooney, but it's just not that great of a film, so I actually enjoyed his version of it. And then last year, 2017, he had another movie with Casey Affleck called A Ghost Story, which is not a remake of the Peter Straub horror film from 1981 with Fred Astaire. It is an original film. It is not a horror film, and why? Whenever I go into places like FYE and Barnes & Noble, they always have it in the horror section, but it's not even remotely a horror story. It's a really sort of tragic romance, melancholy mood piece. It's amazing. I can't believe he went from this big-budgeted Disney film back to that kind of style of film. And then The Old Man and the Gun, which is, to me, it's a completely different film, showing the sort of versatility that David Lowery has as a filmmaker. The Old Man and the Gun has, aside from Robert Redford, it's got Sissy Spacek, who is also on the first season of Castle Rock this year on Hulu. She's an amazing actor, and I've been a fan of hers my whole life.
Which I'm sorry, by the way, everybody. Joe and I had a crazy summer, and we tried to get together to go over those. We had a couple of reviews on that. But yeah, we were both thoroughly pretty impressed with that series.
Castle Rock. Oh, man.
Castle
It's a
Rock.
shame that it's an anthology season in the tradition of American Horror Story and Fargo, because I want to go back to those characters. I want their story to be resolved. It's such an interesting story, but I digress. So we've got Robert Redford in his final film. We got Casey Affleck. We've got Sissy Spacek. We got Danny Glover, Tom Waits giving a truly remarkable performance. You got.
It was great to see both of them. I love to see Danny Glover still killing it, and I mean his part was not huge in this movie, but it was great to see him going again. I love Danny Glover.
Me too. I mean, you had John David Washington, fresh from Ballers and Black Klansman. You also had a small part for Keith Carradine, who was in last time I saw him was in season 2 of Fargo. Is always dependable. The cast worked really well. It's based around the true story of famous bank robber and prison escapee Forrest Silva Tucker, who passed away in prison in Texas in 2004 at the age of 83. So Robert Redford is, I believe he's 80, but he's playing Forrest Tucker as a 72-year-old man. And there's not really much difference. Robert Redford, I am so envious of how well you've aged, but he's still a handsome lad. He's got a great head of hair. I wish I did. I can't believe at his age he still has just this amazing hair.
Speaking of which, just for all you young people who don't know who Robert Redford was, we just been over. Joe went over his entire catalog, but it's something, or at least a lot of his catalog,
more of his popular.
Yeah. But the point is that just to make sure, kind of understand what he's done for the film industry. He started the Sundance Film Festival and everything here in Utah and 85 and so that's something that has now become one of the biggest film festivals in the world and happens every single year. So he's helped change the world in a lot of ways for film. So
Sundance Film Festival, I think, is probably the most prestigious film festival in the United States. I think it's nearly on par with the Cannes Film Festival or the Toronto Film Festival. It's at least equal with the New York Film Festival, the Tribeca Film Festival. If anything, it's an amazing film festival where a lot of American independent films have made their debut and a lot of foreign films have made their U.S. debut. However, I don't think that Robert Redford has too much ties to it over the last few years. I think he sort of cut the cord and let film Sundance run by other people, because I believe, and I think we share the same sentiment, Mr. Redford and I, not that we're friends or anything. However, if you watch this, Mr. Redford, and you want to look me up, I'd be happy to talk to you, because you're an icon. Look at me. I'm sucking up. But I think he kind of over the commercialization of the Sundance Film Festival too, where it's become a thing where now you have celebrities hanging out there who aren't even in the films that are being promoted at the film festival or competing in the film festival. So, but this is the type of film that would have played at the festival. I don't think he's a total narcissist. I think very few films that he's been in or has been involved with has played at the festival. But for me, this film was a throwback. It's set in 1981, and it felt like a film that could have been made in the mid 70s or the early 80s.
They did a great job of doing 1981, by the way. You've seen some films, and it's like, you're like, it's not really it doesn't anyway. For people who have lived then, for us, it needs to be done right. At least for me, it needs to be done right for me to be put there. And there's moments where they're struggling with machines, going, wait, stop that there. They're trying to dealing with tape machines. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, not just in the car. I mean, the cars, the hairstyles, the clothes. It
Everything
really
was
felt
perfect.
like a time capsule.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a scene where Casey Affleck's character, who's the police detective who's kind of made it a personal deal to catch Forrest Tucker.
Which was a shame, by the way. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
It's a shame that he didn't.
There's a scene where he's got a wall console stereo. And I remember family members of mine way back in the day having those. And I haven't thought about those things in 30 years. And just seeing him turn it on and sit there at the kitchen table, it's like, oh man, I remember life like that, and having to use corded telephones and phone booths, and it was just such a nice throwback. It kind of it is a crime film, it's a heist film, but it's kind of a softer film with a great ensemble cast. Everyone's performance is so believable. The dialogue is so believable.
Light-hearted, heartwarming, crime movie.
And it was really lighthearted, in that there's a lot of humor in it. I mean, it's serious subject matter, but there's a lot of humor in it.
And I found myself, because I went going okay, he needs to be able to tackle it. He needs to be able to tackle this, and he does. For me personally, I needed for me to care about him. I needed him to struggle with going, okay, what am I doing the right? Am I hurting people? Having to struggle with the moral aspect of it. Having to, and he does it. There are certain moments where, of course, but it's an addiction. It's something that he's struggling with. So whatever. But the point is that for me to really kind of be sold on him, he had to have that, and he did. So that was important.
Plus, I mean, I forgot to mention Elizabeth Moss from Handmaid's Tale and Isaiah Whitlock Jr. They're both in this film. I loved the opening graphics, the opening title sequence, just the use of the titles. I'm not sure what the font is, but it's definitely something that's older. I think it's similar in font to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Official 1978 font from film and TV.
I loved the music in this film.
Yeah, it was
by
great.
Daniel Hart was fantastic. It was kind of a nice light jazz score.
Yeah.
And it just carried. I don't think there's too many moments of quiet, moments of actual silence in this film. It is one of those films that seems to layer all the sequences with music, but not in an intrusive way. It actually complements the image and complements the story. Joe Anderson was the cinematographer or the DP in this film, and there were just moments of there were just shots that just are kind of, they're not dynamic shots in that sense, but they just capture that moment so perfectly, whether it's following a car around a corner or a close-up of Robert Redford's eyes as he's driving. Just the natural feel of this film. It felt like a film that could have been made during the New Hollywood or the American New Wave era, which was 67 to 81, which was an era, ironically the film takes place in 81 at the end of that era, but that's an era where the corporations bought the studios. They hired all the young filmmakers from film school. They were making personal material. They were working outside of the studio locations in more natural settings with natural lighting. And it just had that feel. It was very reminiscent. Again, we're talking Dog Day Afternoon, The Godfather, The Conversation, The French Connection. Even The Exorcist is a part of that movement. And I feel like this film was a nice, loving throwback to that era of cinema that pretty much died with the 80s and with the studios pretty much looking for just the next big hit after hit instead of the personal film. And I felt like this was a bit of a personal film.
I couldn't help but find myself wanting Paul Newman to be in this flick. I mean, because once again, throwback to Butch Cassidy, Sundance Kid,
and The Sting.
It would, yeah. So it would have been really cool to see him. Of course, he's not with us anymore, but I'm sure that he would have had him in it. He probably would have had Paul Newman in it if he was still alive. What do you think?
Yeah, Paul Newman passed away in 2008, and I'm willing to bet, without a doubt, if Paul Newman was still alive, he probably would have been one in the members of the Over the Hill Gang, as the police dubbed him, because it's basically the bank robbers are Robert Redford, Danny Glover, Tom Waits.
He probably would have taken Tom Waits' place, or I don't know, or maybe been a fourth guy or whatever.
Maybe. I mean, that would have been a smaller role for Paul Newman.
Right,
It
right.
is kind of weird
Maybe
to think
not.
of where he might have fit in this, but I got to tell you, Tom Waits in this film, he's channeling his inner Jim Jarmusch. He's got the Jim Jarmusch hair going
good.
on, and if you know Tom Waits, you know that he was in Down by Law, Jim Jarmusch's Down by Law. He scored and did all the songs to Jim Jarmusch's
One of
Night
the
on
original
Earth.
beatniks.
He scored Jim Jarmusch's Night on Earth, one of Jim Jarmusch's best films. And I absolutely love Tom Waits as an actor. I like him as a musician. And his performance in this, it's a small part, but I just hang on every nuance of his performance. He has one good story telling why he doesn't like Christmas, and I'm not going to spoil that for you.
So good.
Only Tom Waits can deliver it that way. And it literally had the entire audience laughing. It was so good.
It was so well done. Yeah, that was great. That was really great. And yeah, if for anybody who, if you're a fan of Tom Waits, look that guy up on IMDb. Oh my gosh, the guy's been in literally hundreds of
Bram
films.
Stoker's
He's been
Dracula,
in so many
Mystery
movies.
Men, Down by Law. He's great.
But it's funny because someone told me about this probably about 5-6 years ago. I was just on the phone with somebody at work and they were just talking about Tom Waits and he's just like, yeah, check him out, look him up, and it's like, holy shit, this guy has. I mean, I've just known him as a musician my whole life, and I've followed his music. I've been a fan of his music. He, like I said, he was one of the original beatniks. He was a guy who was always just immersed in cool music, kind of on the edge of stuff, and making cool stuff for people who were okay with listening to a really raspy voice all night, and we're fine with it.
Yeah, he's got a great
and
voice.
doing his thing, but the guy's been in literally. And anyway, the point was is that he's been. I didn't realize how huge his film career is. So
yeah, and how expansive. So this was a nice little notch under his belt, another good film to add to his repertoire.
I really thoroughly enjoyed the dynamic between the cop and the robber. You have the great story of these two guys coming together, and you know the cop. Forgive me, Casey Affleck's character,
Detective John Hunt.
Detective Hunt's character. He. I mean, at the time, he's just like he was. You see him kind of get lifted up by the end of this movie. I mean,
He's got a sort of melancholy.
Yeah, at the very beginning, he's just like, I mean, the first time we see him, he's like, oh, it's my 40th birthday, and he's just like, he may not be hungover, but he looks hungover. He looks like he feels that way. He looks like he's not having that much fun with life, and he's kind of, I don't know, what do you think? Does he seem kind of lifted up a little bit after this movie because he got to chase this guy?
Tika Sumpter plays his wife. He's married. He's got a couple of kids, and she's beautiful and has amazing hair. I would love to date a woman who's got great, big, amazing hair like that. But he's got a career and he's got a house. But he seems very melancholy, like sort of the life.
Still really unhappy.
He's a husband and father. It's like the life has sort of run out on him. And the idea of capturing this gentleman who basically kind of they sort of invite each other to this cat and mouse. It brings some life back into him.
Yeah.
And so you get to see, but the same thing I feel with Robert Redford as Forrest Tucker. He's an amiable guy. He literally loves robbing banks. It's not just for the money. He sits on the money. He doesn't seem to spend a whole lot of it. It's the thrill of it.
I mean, at one point he wanted to pay off someone's mortgage, his girlfriend's mortgage at one point, right?
Yeah. I mean, he
tried to.
I think finding Sissy Spacek's character. Jewel as his love interest just sort of reinvigorates him too. So it's definitely a movie about age as much as it is about crime and redemption. Mm-hmm. And as somebody who is now of a certain age, I could absolutely relate to that. I noticed that you and Chris and I, when we were in the theater, were the three youngest people in the theater.
I had not noticed that. I did not notice that.
I think as I walked out, I remember as I walked out, I did look at the top row, and there was a couple of teenagers that were probably brought there by their parents, their grandparents. But aside from that, we were literally the youngest. I mean, everybody in the theater was at least 55 and up, and it plays on that level. It's not. I still think if you're young, you can still enjoy the film because I mean, inevitably you're going to get old or older, and this is a nice insight into kind of what can happen as you get older. And it's one of many films to come out this year that is based on true stories. American Animals, Black Klansman. We saw a slew of trailers for up and coming films. One about another film about Oscar Wilde that Rupert Everett wrote and directed and starred in. Several films about. We also had Steven Spielberg's The Post. So a lot of films about true stories. This one actually, as opposed to Black Klansman, which kind of played up the whole, this is based on some for real shit, yo. And it is, but like all true stories, there's going to be changes for dramatic purposes, and this one let you know that it's mostly true. Whereas American Animals was like, no, this actually happened. This isn't a true story. This happened. And it's almost a half documentary, half drama. This film just kind of played with it. Mostly true. There are things that they left out about Mr. Tucker's life. They left out the fact that his father left when he was young, that he was married to 3 different women over his life, and that they did touch on that he had 2 children, but you only got to meet one of them, even though he would tell people he's not, he has no children. And I think virtually every character outside of Forrest Tucker in this film was fictionalized. But it doesn't. So I don't think there was a Detective John Hunt. I could be wrong about that.
Okay.
But I haven't seen anything because it doesn't matter because the film It really, really works, and I highly recommend it. One of the most enjoyable film experiences I've had this year.
This year, that makes our second heist movie, right? We saw American Animals this year, right?
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah, that was in
that's
June.
our second heist movie of the year. It's actually really cool to see that heist films are not going necessarily out of style. I mean, they're probably going in and out, etc. But it's cool to see that they're actually still somewhat popular. So,
Well, every type of genre film always has its heyday and then kind of winds down. I don't think this is a subgenre of film that's ever going to go away. I think people enjoy crime fiction, true crime fiction, and heist films because they're exciting, you know. In a way, when you watch films like Heat, Michael Mann's Heat, or Michael Mann's Thief, you want the bad guy to get away with it. I wanted Forrest Tucker to get away with it, even though I know he doesn't, but he doesn't because Robert Redford plays him so amiable.
the thing that really got me and kind of threw me was the very end when it shows all the escapes that he goes through, which is amazing. 16 or 17, I think 17 escapes
was
at
born
this
in
point.
what
So, it was so.
So he was born in 1920. His first escape from jail was 1936 for car theft. So I loved that montage. That montage was actually a touching montage. The use of music and the use of flashback. There was a moment where they used a CGI face of when he's cutting through the bars on the prison to escape. It was definitely a stand-in with the CGI younger Robert Redford, but they did also use footage from one of his other movies, split into two, where he jumps out of the truck. And then when it shows him run up against the tree, that's from the same movie, and I can't think of the name of it right now. But it was so cool how it reminded me.
It was definitely from the '60s, like that's.
Yeah, it was definitely. Yeah. It reminded me of Steven Soderbergh's The Limey. Brilliant swan song to a man's final. I mean, bravo, Mr. Redford. This is a great way to go out and end your career on a high note.
Yeah, and it's really cool too because the whole film you just don't because you don't read up on the character because you want to find out in the movie. Even though we know it's an actual character, but the point that I found so fun was that you see him as this old man the whole time. He's just he's a gentleman, but then he's like, oh my gosh, he is an escape artist. Like this guy. Anyway, it just reminded me of. Have you ever been to Alcatraz? Have you been there?
No, I've never actually been to Alcatraz. I've always wanted to go though.
So my girlfriend and I at the time years ago we went to go see it, and it was an amazing time. It was really fun. They give you a headset, and it's a pre-recorded tour that you just listen to and you go on yourself. And at that time they had little headset, and you just walk around and it kind of tell you, and it kind of just illustrates to you. It says, okay, so turn to your left, and in this cell it tells you all the people who tried to escape from this cell, and there's like several stories from each. Anyway, several different cells.
You
It was very
probably saw
interesting.
Al Capone's cell there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Nice.
Really cool stories, and they kind of it's like a radio show. It has like sounds and stuff, like have them like filing down certain pieces of tools so that they can dig themselves through the through the things. And so anyway, it's a kind of a cool concept and interesting. I'm not in support of criminals or that type of thing, like in general, or a crime, but it's fun to think about, fun to speculate, fun to watch, and especially when it's something that it's so scary, something like that, like escaping from Alcatraz. You have freezing cold water, and then you have sharks. Yeah. So it's like, what? How the hell?
Plus high tide, like very rough waters.
Yeah.
But what's funny too is because the movie takes place in 1981. In 1979, in real life, Forrest Tucker escaped from San Quentin by building a flippin' boat.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. That was one of the coolest
things that he painted on the side.
That was actually really funny.
The thing is I'm not, again, like you. I don't. Obviously, crime isn't good. It doesn't pay, and there are no victimless crimes. People did get hurt from their banks being robbed, even though the banks were insured. But he was not a violent criminal.
Right.
He was very polite. All he had to do was show you the gun. Or in some cases,
according to this movie, he was. According to this movie, he was a non-violent.
Yeah, well, I mean, everything I've read too seems to instigate that he was. I don't know if he was quite as polite and genial as he was in this.
Right.
But he certainly wasn't a violent criminal.
Anyway, let us know what you guys think. I'd love to talk with people. Particularly people who know who Robert Redford. I'm just kidding. If you don't know who Robert Redford is, check out Butch Cassidy.
Seriously, if you don't know who Robert Redford is, you need to start watching more movies. I'm gonna give it 4 out of 4 stars. I think it's in my top 5 best films, most enjoyable films and favorite films of the year. And I'd like to know what you think.
Since we're using the star system, I'm going to say 3.5. I did. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun, but it's just with something like this. I feel like I could have used a little bit more, just slightly a little bit more grit. But I guess I get what they're trying to convey here. Like just the one thing that I think the thing that made it go to 3.5 stars, and this is my stupid American thirst for action person. Is that I wanted to see that big heist that they did, but they don't show it. So they don't show, and it's just I get it. We all get that. I just wanted to see it.
So 3.5 from Ben, 4 from me. So that's definite. You should go and see this film. So as always, thanks for joining us, and like and subscribe.
Slike and rubscribe. I mean,
something like that to that extent.
Lubscribe.
Look, Mom, we're doing it.
Psych and lubscribe.
And also, please let us know what you think if you've seen the film. I'd love to hear some feedback on this. I think this film is a good film. So,
yeah. And I love the chat. We love chatting with people on Facebook or wherever you are on YouTube. If you're loving this, we love Robert Redford. We grew up on him, and hopefully you had a good time with this movie too.
Yeah.
This is the Fanatics of Film. My name is Ben,
and I'm Joe. Have a good one.
Have a splendid evening.